I know you guys didn't, most of you guys, or not any of you guys, it didn't enter this specific competition, but yet again, like I'm pretty sure I said earlier, is it's all about blind feedback. Blind feedback. Hey guys, happy Homebrew Wednesday. Welcome to Homebrew Wednesday number 50. I guess it took me longer than a year to get to this point, but as I've told you in the past, I don't really post when I know I have what to share with you guys. So right now, I'm drinking one of the beers that's involved with my score sheets from Homebrew Alley, the competition that was in the beginning of February here in New York City. One of the biggest competition of the year, basically. And my oak-aged barley wine, the one that I brewed in the like the end of 2013 and bottled it in the beginning of 2014. It won third place in the smoke and wood aged beer category. So from the score sheets, I'll go over it first and then get to the one that scored lowest and go up to the highest of the other four. I'll try to make it as quick and concise as possible, but I just as a matter of reflection in this monumental number, Homebrew Wednesday, I thought I'd go through it, especially because most of these beers are beers that I brewed for the first time, but came out pretty good, not perfect, but pretty good, but good, and I wanted to get some blind feedback in the competition, so just the way I'll present it, kind of their point of view versus mine, is kind of a way for you guys to enter competitions and then use the feedback to improve your recipes if and when you do brew the same recipes again, possibly with of course a few tweaks to make them better. So I'll just show you quickly the ribbon I got. It's pretty cool. It took a little longer to get the score sheets just because there were some matters with the postage of shipping the ones with the winners that had ribbons in them. So as you see, it has the Homebrew Alley logo and the 2015. And then I won third place. So it's my first ribbon, and I'm really excited to hopefully enter more competitions in the future. First, for the oak-aged barley wine, so it was judged by a recognized judge, which means that they've they've taken the test and didn't score that well, or they're on their way to becoming a fully certified judge. And then the second one was the person whose rank is pending because she probably hasn't finished the test yet. Or he hasn't finished the test yet. So so for the first person who was recognized to be a JCP judge, she liked the aroma of the oak and the sweet malt behind it, and the clean. Smelled very clean. Some nice dark fruits, caramel and vanilla from the bourbon. A nice deep copper color with a little bit of head on it. And then of course, like what I would think, the wood and oak really come forward in the flavor with a little bit of fruit and vanilla and caramel. And she said that the finish is a bit sweet, which I do agree. But overall, she said that the sweetness was in the mouthfeel was almost velvety because the oak helped prevent it from being too sweet, and that's what I get when I drink the beer. Some people think it's too sweet, but personally, even though it's not my best barley wine, or what I could think my best version if I were to brew it again, another oak-aged barley wine, I think that the oak really balances everything out for me personally. And then overall, she gave it an 8 out of 10, and the total score was a 38 out of 50, which is in a very good range. So I said a very oaky beer, hard to compare to the base beer. Of course, I don't know how I thought I put the name of the beer as a barley wine, but apparently it didn't get to them that the base beer was a barley wine. But overall, she really liked it. And the second one is pretty similar. but it gave it a 40 instead. Overall, got a 39, and just from my point of view, as that beer that won, I think just the complexity of the oak character and the way it somewhat balanced the malts really gave it that edge that it needed to get a 39 and win third place in that category, which the second place was also an oak aged barley wine. So then with my newer batch of barley wine, scored a 27, which is like the high end of the good range, but also has flaws. And like I told you in the last Homebrew Wednesday, in number 49, when I was waxing the bottles, that I overcarbed the beer, which caused some off flavors, and that's why I waxed it right away, even though initially I wasn't going to oak it. I mean, I wasn't going to wax it, but once I saw off flavors developing, they carbonating too much, I needed to prevent any more oxygen from getting in there. So even though it might be overcarbed, hopefully it'll age well, because, you know, with all the malts, that was an expensive beer to brew. Just quickly, I'm not going to go through every one now that I went through the one that I won for, but the first judge, it doesn't say what the rank was, but that they got acetaldehyde, some oxidation. Because of that, they didn't get much of the malts, but they did pick up some of the hops, and then they got some malt sweetness and, you know, a nice complex caramel flavor, you know, but again, he gave it a 12 out of 20 in the flavor because the oxidation flavors were like the acetaldehyde and a little bit of cardboard were distracting, so he gave it a 12 out of 20. And then so then just to sum his thing up, he said it's a strong English ale with some technical flaws such as acetaldehyde and overcarbonation. Improves when carbonation trails off, but needs more complexity and a bit less hop aggression. So I just feel that the overcarbonation and the fact that it needs to age and a little bit off flavor is what's going to improve that beer. I know when I first reviewed it before it fully carbonated, I was hemming and hawing over it, but, you know, with these high ABV beers, which especially the sweeter ones like barley wines, which finish slow, it's important to, if you're going to bottle condition, to use less. Less is more in this case, and I didn't do that this time. So I don't know if next winter I'm going to be brewing another English barley wine. I might want to take a break and brew an Imperial Stout, because some of my friends and my older brother have been bugging me to brew one, and I really do want to brew one. And of course, knowing me, I already have a recipe in my beersmith for one. So yeah. So the next judge gave it a 28. So, you know, scored it, you know, a bit higher. So that person didn't, you know, picked up a little bit on some of the off flavors, but he really stressed more that he was able to pick up some hops and malt behind the overcarbonation. So I really think that it has potential, because when I gave it to them, you know, it was only the bottle for like 3 or 4 months, so it, you know, it needs time, and hopefully with time, like I said, it'll do well. Moving on to my Imperial Rye Saison, before I move on to it, like, I'm going through these, you know, like I said, to show you guys just my process of saying, you know, this is what they said, and this is what I think, and how I could justify their feedback, and how I'm gonna use it, you know, next time I brew, or when you brew one of the style. These are things to look out for, just to make sure that in a competition where they're really putting a magnifying glass to every little thing in your beer, then, you know, you'll kind of have a good outlook or a good perspective to start with. So the next beer is like I said, is my Seven Blessings Imperial Rye Saison. I love it. I think it's a really good beer, even now that it's aged, and a lot of people that I let it try at Brunity and other homebrewing events like it a lot. But again, both judges, one gave it a 30 and one gave it a 35. So one really was a big, you know, 5 points in this type of competition. It's pretty big. So they got the rye in the aroma, both of them, and otherwise they didn't get much else, which I don't agree with, but at least this first person did. They got more hops than they would have liked, but I don't think it's that hoppy. I think just the spice from the rye comes off as hop bitterness. You got some mild fruit notes. It seems like the rye is dominating the flavor. I don't think so, but you know, I like rye, so I might be biased. And they said that there's a slight puckering taste and mild tartness, which is to style. But overall, this first judge who gave it a 30 said the rye was too much. So I guess, you know, maybe next time I'll use a little less rye to bring out more saison. But the next one also brought out the hops, a little bit of sweetness and aroma, and they, you know, and then they liked that the alcohol was well hidden in the aroma, and the appearance was golden, nice, clear, and good for the style. Even though the first judge said that it was hazy, probably because you got the end of a bottle, because it was bottle conditioned, and in the taste, they gave it a 14 out of 20. That the rye comes through, especially in the finish, with spicy notes that linger, some alcohol heat, and finish isn't terribly dry. Then here he said give it a 7 out of 10 overall because the sweetness was a little more than it should be for the style, and it partially excused by higher starting gravity. Fairly refreshing, very interesting submission. Overall, you know, both the first judge got distracted by the rye. The second judge thought it really blended well. He gave it a 35. So for me, the only thing I would really change with this beer is add maybe a touch less rye, maybe bring down the IBUs just a tiny bit. But overall, I would brew an Imperial Rye Saison again, because I really do think the beer has a lot of potential, and that's that. Next one isn't this beer, or my Holy Beggar's Breakfast. And one judge gave it a 35, and one gave it a 33, so I got a 34 in the end, which is pretty good. Overall, just to not go into too much detail, because, you know, this is the most recent beer that I brewed out of all the ones that I entered, is that, and you've probably seen it, is I entered it as a sweet stout because of it's a chocolate oatmeal milk stout. So a lot of them, you know, thought it was a really balanced flavor of the beer. But the only real flaw that they figured, which I actually know the judge, and his name is Chris Kuzma, who you may have seen the Brunity video, who's an apprentice judge and a professional brewer. The only thing really he thought that could have changed was that there should be more roast. And I think that when I drink this beer, like I'm drinking it now, that I think the only flaw in it is that it's creamy, has a nice lactose, like milk cream, like cappuccino cream flavor, some nice chocolate, you know, and it's really balanced. But overall, it just needs a touch more roast, and it would make it a great beer. So for next year, when I brew it again, which I'll definitely be brewing this beer again because I just love it. The only thing that I would change is make sure the carbonation is a little more spot on, or I purposely over carbonate before I bottle for a competition, because I guess my poor man's beer gun didn't keep as much carbonation in the bottle as it could have, and I would add a little bit more roast, maybe, and put a little, instead of cold steeping all of the dark malts, only do a portion of it so that there'd be more roast character. Is my triple, which was judged by an experienced judge, or a recognized judge who's been in, you know, a bunch of competition, and then the other one was an apprentice, but who has, you know, been judging competitions for a while, so he has a lot of experience, but I guess he hasn't really taken the test yet. So for this triple, for me, just to start off, it finished out too high, so it really needed the age to really balance out. So one judge gave it a 37 and one gave it a 33. So overall, for a beer that finished sweet, you know, to get a 35 in the end, meaning that it aged pretty darn well. And I think I have like 7 or 9 bottles left to age, so it'll be cool just to see how much it aged. And I do want to brew this recipe again, but I don't know when I'm going to get to it. So overall, you know, they had out, and a lot of people gave it, you know, they really said, both of them said that the yeast really shined. And the first judge really likes the ester profile and the spicy cloviness to the beer. But and the second one, what I really liked is that he, you know, picked up on some booze and a lot of yeast character and the spice like the first judge, but you know, and but he said maybe the spice was a little bit too much in the end for him, and then the phenolics, which I think came out more as it aged because of the fact that, you know, the booze and the phenol mixed together from the finishing sweet. So in the end, what I really loved, which is the best feedback I think I got in all my beers, was that I was harsh on this beer, but for good reason. It has potential, could be a lot cleaner, could be more balanced. It wasn't refreshing like a triple should be, and then you wanted to know, you know, what yeast they used and what were the fermentation conditions. So, and the yeast was the 3787 high gravity, and it was, you know, fermented in the right conditions, but, you know, but because it finished high, you know, it kind of finished a little boozy, especially once it was, you know, 6 months or more. I still had a little booze to it. And so next time I'm going to make sure it dries out from the beginning, so that, and maybe even add some aromatic malt if it's not in the recipe already, just to give it a little more balance. But overall, you know, with the 35 in such a competitive category of the big Belgian ales, I'm definitely happy with it. Alright guys, so I hope you enjoyed my reflecting on my Homebrew Alley score sheets. You know, I know you guys didn't, most of you guys, or not any of you guys, you know, didn't enter this specific competition, but yet again, like I'm pretty sure I said earlier, is it's all about blind feedback. Blind feedback. Because, you know, you can take, like, I take my beers to homebrew club meetings, big beer festivals like Brunity, you know, to swap at bitter and esters. I share it with friends when they come over and get really good feedback. But it's not really until you get blind feedback that you really, you know, get the true sense of what other people think of your beer, because even I tend to sugarcoat a lot of my feedback at homebrew club meetings. Like I pick up a little, you know, a little diacetyl, I don't always say it, you know. You know, so this is just a way to say, you know, even though if you enter beers you know might have little flaws, you're just looking to see what the judges thought of them and how they recommend you improving your beer, it's still, you know, a great tool to be able to go back on, so that when you do brew the beers again, if you brew the same recipe again, or you want to brew a modified version of the recipe, you have, you know, really honest feedback to look at. And, you know, thankfully, my first ever competition, I won 3rd place in a really tough category, so the smoking wood aged beers. So I'm going to hang this up near my keezer, and hopefully, you know, as time goes on, I'll enter, like I said, enter more competitions and win more ribbons. But in the end, you know, again, it's not about the ribbons, it's about the blind feedback. So, moving ahead in my brewing, my next beer is going to be a Founder's Porter clone. I'm having one issue with the recipe I found online, which is the amount of chocolate malt. So I'm not sure exactly if I'm going to use less or the same that the recipe that I found on Homebrew Talk and Brew Toad recommend. But again, I love Founder's Porter, and I really want to have a porter on tap, you know, as it gets, you know, the winter winds down into the spring, and you have a nice roasty, drinkable beer that pairs well with food, you know, as you know, go from or hearty winter meals into the slightly more, you know, grilled or lighter meals in the spring. So again, I guess I'll thank you guys for your support so far And I look forward to keep on, learning from each batch, getting as much feedback on my beers as possible, and taking you guys along for the ride. Cheers, and happy Homebrew Wednesday.